world we live in is awash with data that comes pouring in from everywhere around us. On its own, this data is just noise and confusion. To make sense of data, to find the meaning in it, we need the powerful branch of science, statistics.
Believe me, there's nothing boring about statistics, especially not today when we can make the data sing.
With statistics, we can really make sense of the world. And there's more. With statistics, the data deluge, as it's being called, is leading us to an ever greater understanding of life on Earth and the universe beyond.
And thanks to the incredible power of today's computers, it may fundamentally transform the process of scientific discovery.
I kid you not, statistics is now the sexiest subject around.
Did you know that there is 1 million boats in Sweden? That's one boat per 9 people. It's the highest number of boats per person in Europe. Being a statistician, you don't like telling your profession at dinner parties. But really, statisticians shouldn't be shy because everyone wants to understand what's going on. And statistics gives us a perspective on the world we live in that we can't get in any other way.
Statistics tells us whether the things we think and believe are actually true. And statistics are far more useful than we usually like to admit.
In the last recession, there was this famous call-in to a talk radio station. The man complained, "In times like this, when unemployment rates are up to 13% and income has fallen by 5% and suicide rates are climbing, I get so angry that the government is wasting money on things like collection of statistics."
I'm not officially a statistician. Strictly speaking, my field is global health. But I got really obsessed with stats when I realized how much people in Sweden just don't know about the rest of the world.
I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. These students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system, so I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came, and one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one: which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. That means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not that. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there.
Today, there's more information accessible than ever before. And I work with my team at the Gapminder Foundation using new tools that help everyone make sense of the changing world. We draw on the masses of data that's now freely available from international institutions like the UN and the World Bank. And it's become my mission to share the insights from this data with anyone who listens and to reveal how statistics is nothing to be frightened of.
Thank you very much. I'm going to provide you a view of the global health situation across mankind. And I'm going to do that in a hopefully enjoyable way, so relax.
So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This is China. This is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And I'm going to stage a race here between this sort of yellowish Ford here and the red Toyota down there and the brownish Volvo. The Toyota has a very bad start down here, and United States Ford is going off-road then, and the Volvo is doing quite fine. This is the war. The Toyota got off track, and now Toyota is coming on the healthier side of Sweden. That's about where I sold the Volvo and bought the Toyota.
This was a great leap forward when China fell down.
It was central planning by Mao Zedong. China recovered, and they said never more stupid central planning, but they went up here.
No, there was one more inequity. Look there. United States.
Oh, they broke my frame. Washington, D.C. is so rich over there, but they are not as healthy as Kerala in India. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Welcome to the USA, world leaders in big cars and free data. There are many here who share my vision of making public data accessible and useful for everyone. The city of San Francisco is in the lead, opening up its data on everything. Even the police department is releasing all its crime reports. This official crime data has been turned into a wonderful interactive map by two of the city's computer whizzes. It's community statistics in action.
Crime Spotting is a map of crime reports from the San Francisco Police Department showing, dots on maps for citizens to be able to see patterns of crime around their neighborhoods in San Francisco. The map is not just about individual crimes, but about broader patterns that show you where crime is clustered around the city, which areas have high crime and which areas have relatively low crime.
We're here at the top of Jones Street on Nob Hill. Quite a nice neighborhood. What the crime maps show us is the relationship between topography and crime. Basically, the higher up the hill, the less crime there is. You cross over the border into the flats. Essentially, as soon as you get into the kind of lower lying areas of Jones Street, the crime just skyrockets. So we're here in the Uptown Tenderloin district. It's one of the oldest and densest neighborhoods in San Francisco. This is where you go to buy drugs, right around here. We see lots of aggravated assaults, lots of auto thefts. Basically, the huge part of the crime that happens in the city happens just right in this 5 or 6 block radius.
If you've been hearing police sirens in your neighborhood, you can use the map to find out why. If you're out at night in an unfamiliar part of town, you can check the map for streets to avoid. If a neighbor gets burgled, you can see, is it a one-off or has there been a spike in local crime?
If you commute through a neighborhood and you're worried about its safety, the fact that we have the ability to turn off all the nighttime and middle of the day crimes and show you just the things that are happening during the commute is a statistical operation. But I think to people that are interacting with the thing, it feels very much more like they're just sort of browsing a website or, shopping on Amazon. They're looking at data and they don't realize they're doing statistics.
What's most exciting for me is that public statistics is making citizens more powerful and the authorities more accountable.
We have community meetings that the police attend, and what citizens are now doing are bringing printouts of the maps that show where crimes are taking place, and they're demanding services from the police department, and the police department is now having to change how they police, how they provide policing services, because the data is showing what is working and what is not.
People in San Francisco are also using public data to map social inequalities and see how to improve society. And the possibilities are endless.
I think our dream government data analysis project would really be focused on live information, on stuff that was being reported and pushed out to the world over the internet as it was happening. You know, trash pickups, traffic accidents, buses, and I think through the kind of stats gathering power of the internet, it's possible to really begin to see the workings of a city displayed as a unified interface.
So that's where we are heading, towards a world of free data with all the statistical insights that come from it, accessible to everyone, empowering us as citizens and letting us hold our rulers to account. It's a long way from where statistics began.
Statistics are essential to us to monitor our governments and our societies. But it was our rulers up there who started the collection of statistics in the first place in order to monitor us. In the 19th century, scholars all over Europe did amazing work in measuring their societies. They were hoovering up data on almost everything. But numbers alone don't tell you anything. You have to analyze them. And that's what makes statistics.
When the first statisticians began to get to grips with analyzing their data, they seized upon the average, and they took the average of everything. What's so great about an average is that you can take a whole mass of data and reduce it to a single number. And though each of us is unique, our collective lives produce averages that can characterize whole populations.
I looked in my local newspaper one week and saw a pensioner had accidentally put her foot on the accelerator and crushed her friend against a wall. Devastating, hideous, horrible thing to happen. And then there was a second one about a young man who didn't have a driving license, was driving a car under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and he bashed into a pedestrian, killed him. What's remarkable, absolutely remarkable, if you look at the number of people who die each year in traffic crashes, it's nearly a constant. What? All these individual events, somehow when you sum them all up, there's the same number every year. And every year, 2.5 times as many men die in traffic crashes as women, and it's a constant. And every year, the rate in Belgium is double the rate in England. There are these remarkable regularities, so that these individual particular events sum up into a social phenomenon.
Let's see what Sweden have done. We used to boast about fast social progress. That's where we were.
In my lectures, to tell stories about the changing world, I use the averages from entire countries, whether the average of income, child mortality, family size, or carbon output.
Okay, I give you Singapore, the year I was born. Singapore had twice the child mortality of Sweden. It's the most tropical country in the world, a marshland on the equator, and here we go. It took a little time for them to get independent, but then they started to grow their economy, and they made the social investment. They got away malaria. They got a magnificent health system that beat both US and Sweden. We never thought it would happen, that they would win over Sweden.
But useful as averages are, they don't tell you the whole story. average, Swedish people have slightly less than 2 legs. This is because a few people only have 1 leg or no legs, and no one has 3 legs. So almost everybody in Sweden has more than the average number of legs. The variation in data is just as important as the average.
But how do you get a handle on variation? For this, you transform numbers into shapes. Let's look again at the number of adult women in Sweden for different heights. Plotting the data as a shape shows how much their heights vary from the average and how wide that variation is. The shape a set of data makes is called its distribution.
This is the income distribution of China, 1970. This is the income distribution of the United States, 1970. Almost no overlap. And what has happened? China is growing, it's not so equal any longer, and it's appearing here, overlooking the United States, almost like a ghost, isn't it? Huh? It's pretty scary.
The statisticians who first explored distribution discovered one shape that turned up again and again. The Victorian scholar Francis Galton was so fascinated, he built a machine that could reproduce it, and he found it fitted so many different sets of measurements that he named it the normal distribution. Whether it was people's arm spans, lung capacities, or even their exam results, the normal distribution shape recurred time and time again. Other statisticians soon found many other regular shapes, each produced by a particular kind of natural or social processes. And every statistician has their favorite.
The Poisson distribution, the Poisson shape, is my favorite distribution. I think it's an absolute cracker.
The Poisson shape describes how likely it is that out of the ordinary things will happen. Imagine a London bus stop where we know that on average we'll get 3 buses an hour. We won't always get 3 buses, of course. Amazingly, the Poisson shape will show us the probability that in any given hour we will get 4, 5 or 6 buses or no buses at all. The exact shape changes with the average. But whether it's how many people will win the lottery jackpot each week or how many people will phone a call center each minute, the Poisson shape will give the probabilities.
The wonderful example where this was applied to in the late 19th century was to count each year the number of Prussian officers, cavalry officers, who were kicked to death by their horses. Now, some years there were none, some years there were 1, some years there were 2, up to 7, I think, one particularly bad year. But with this distribution, how many years there were with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 Prussian cavalry officers kicked to death by their horses beautifully obeyed the Poisson distribution.
Visualization is right at the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space, with a bit of technical assistance from the crew.
So, here we go. First, an axis for health. Life expectancy, from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income per person, $400, $4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick, and up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa south of Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. And in 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy were below 40 in all countries, and only UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? The Industrial Revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the rest. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. What a catastrophe! And now I speed up through the 1920s and the 1930s. And in spite of the Great Depression, Western countries forge on towards greater wealth and health. Japan and some others try to follow, but most countries stay down here. Now, after the tragedies of the Second World War, we stop a bit to look at the world in 1948. 1948 was a great year. The war was over, Sweden topped the medal table at the Winter Olympics, and I was born. But the differences between the countries of the world was wider than ever. United States was in the front, Japan was catching up. Brazil was way behind, Iran was getting a little richer from oil, but still had short lives. And the Asian giants, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Indonesia, they were still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the 1970s, then countries in Asia and Latin America started to catch up with the Western countries. They became the emerging economies. Some in Africa follows. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the world today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country averages, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa.
And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner.
Well, what you just seen in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involved plotting of 120,000 numbers. Pretty neat, huh?
So, with statistics we can begin to see things as they really are. From tables of data to averages, distributions and visualizations, statistics gives us a clear description of the world. But with statistics we cannot only discover what is happening, but also explore why, by using the powerful analytical method, correlation.
Just looking at one thing at a time doesn't tell you very much. You've got to look at the relationships between things, how they change, how they vary together. And that's what correlation is about. And that's how you start trying to understand the processes that are really going on in the world and in society.
Most of us today would recognize that crime correlates to poverty, that infection correlates to poor sanitation, and that knowledge of statistics correlates to being great at dancing. Correlations can be very tricky.
I got a joke about silly correlations. There was this American who was afraid of heart attack, and he found out that the Japanese ate very little fat and almost didn't drink wine, but they had much less heart attacks than the Americans. But on the other hand, he also found out that the French eat as much fat as the Americans, and they drink much more wine, but they also have less heart attacks. So he concluded that what kills you is speaking English.
Smoke, smoke, smoke that cigarette. Puff, 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 and if you smoke yourself to death.
The time, the pace, the cigarette, weights tipped.
The best example of a really groundbreaking correlation is the link that was established in the 1950s between smoking and lung cancer. Not long after the Second World War, a British doctor, Richard Doll, investigated lung cancer patients in 20 London hospitals, and he became certain that the only thing they had in common was smoking. So certain that he stopped smoking himself, but other people weren't so sure.
A lot of the discussion of the early data linking smoking to lung cancer said, well, it's not the smoking, surely, that thing that we've done all our lives, that can't be bad for you. Maybe it's genes. Maybe people who are genetically predisposed to get lung cancer are also genetically predisposed to smoke. Maybe it's not the smoking, maybe it's air pollution, that smokers are somehow more exposed to air pollution than non-smokers. Maybe it's not smoking, maybe it's poverty. So now we've got three alternate explanations, apart from chance.
To verify his correlation did imply cause and effect, Richard Doll created the biggest statistical study of smoking yet. He began tracking the lives of 40,000 British doctors, some of whom smoked and some of whom didn't, and gathered enough data to correlate the amount the doctors smoked with their likelihood of getting cancer. Eventually, he not only showed a correlation between smoking and lung cancer, but also a correlation between stopping smoking and reducing the risk. This was science at its best.
What correlations do not replace is human thought. You've got to think about what it means. I mean, what a good scientist does, if he comes up with a correlation, is try as hard as she or he possibly can to disprove it, to break it down, to get rid of it, to try and refute it. And if it withstands all those efforts at demolishing it and it's still standing up, then cautiously you say, we really might have something here.
So where does all of this leave us? We generate unimaginable quantities of data about everything you can think of, and we analyze it to reveal the patterns. And now, not only expert, but all of us can understand the stories in the numbers. Instead of being led astray by prejudice, with statistics at our fingertips, our eyes can be open for a fact-based view of the world. So, more than ever before, we can become authors of our own destiny. And that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 9, 31, 32, 3, 34, 35, 36, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 3, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 9, 31, 32, 3, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 52, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 71, 32, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 81, 82, 3, 84, 5, 6, 78, 9, 100.